So using 3x squared plus 6x minus 36 as an example again, what are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 3? Now they are 1 and 3. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 6? Well, these are 1, 2, 3, and 6. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 36? Let's start with the lowest number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 won't divide evenly into 36, so we'll skip that. 6, 7, and 8 will not divide evenly into 36. We'll skip those. 9, 12, and 18. So there are a lot of numbers that will divide evenly into 36. But the largest number that will divide evenly into 3, 6, and 36 is 3. So this becomes our greatest common factor. Now, once we have the greatest common factor, in this case 3, there's a very organized, stepwise process we can use to factor these. So we'll start by writing down the greatest common factor. That's a 3. We'll add an open bracket, and then we'll divide the first term by the greatest common factor. So our first term is 3x squared. We'll divide that by our greatest common factor, which is 3, and that will give us a value of x squared. 3x squared divided by 3 equals x squared. And all we'll do now is we'll put that answer, that x squared, after the bracket. Then we'll look at the second term, which is 6x. We'll divide the second term by the greatest common factor, which is 3. The answer to that is 2x. 6x divided by 3 is 2x. So again, we'll just put that inside the bracket, right next to the first term. Then we'll look at the last term. We'll divide it by the greatest common factor. So 36 divided by 3 is subtract 36 divided by 3, so we'll put the negative in there. The answer to that is negative 12. So we'll just place that inside the bracket next to the second term. We'll close the bracket, and there we have our answer. So once we get comfortable with these steps, as long as we follow them, we shouldn't have too much trouble factoring just about any question that's put before us. This one's a little trickier though, because all 3 terms in this polynomial have an x value. We'll deal with the numbers first though. So what are all the numbers that divide evenly into 5? They are 1 and 5. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 15? Well, let's start with our low numbers and work up. 1 will divide evenly into 15. 2 will not, so we'll skip that. 3 will divide evenly into 15. 4 will not, we'll skip that. 5 will divide evenly into 15. And there's one more that I didn't write down, but I should have. It's 15. So the numbers that will divide evenly into 15 are 1, 3, 5, and 15. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 35? Well, they are, again, starting with lower numbers: 1, 3, 5, 7, 15, and 35. But the largest number that's found in all three of these lists is 5. So our greatest common factor is 5. Now, in these terms, they all have x values. So we are going to have to change, just saying 5 is our greatest common factor would not be accurate. We have to look at all these x values that we have and understand that x to some exponent will divide into these evenly. For the time being, all I want you to do is just take the smallest x value in our question and add that. So in this case, we're looking at 5x to the 5th, 5x to the 3rd, and negative 5x to the 4th. The smallest exponent that we have here is x to the 3rd. So we're just going to add that to our 5. So 5x to the 3rd will be our greatest common factor. Now, once we have our greatest common factor, we simply write it down, then we'll add an open bracket, and then we'll look at our first term and divide it by our greatest common factor. Our greatest common factor is 5x to the 3rd, so 5x to the 5th divided by 5x to the 3rd equals x squared. So we're going to take this value, x squared, and we're just going to put it inside the bracket. Then we'll look at our second term. 15x cubed divided by 5x cubed gives us an answer of 3. We'll put that into the bracket right after the first term. And then we'll look at our third term and divide it by the greatest common factor. And that will give us 35x to the 4th divided by 5x to the 3rd. Our answer is 7x. It was negative 35x to the 4th, so we'll put in a negative 7x. We'll close our bracket, and there's our answer. Factor each of the following by a common factor. So, what are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 3? They are 1 and 3. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 21? They are 1, 3, 7, and 21. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 30? They are 1, 2, 3, 6, 10, 15, and 30. Now, what is the largest number that is found in all of these lists? And in this case, it's 3. So our greatest common factor is 3. Now that we have our greatest common factor, we'll write it down. We'll put in an open bracket. And then we will look at our first term and divide it by our greatest common factor. 3x squared divided by 3 is x squared. We'll put it inside the bracket. Looking at our second term, 21x divided by our greatest common factor 3 equals 7x. We'll just place it in the brackets right next to the first term. Looking at the third term, 30, dividing it by our greatest common factor 3, gives us an answer of 10. Put it inside the bracket and close the bracket. There is our answer. Next example, negative x squared plus 4x minus 3. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into negative 1? Well, they are negative 1 and 1. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 4? They are 1, 2, and 4. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 3? They are 1 and 3. Our greatest common factor is 1. Now this is a bit of a twist on what we've been doing, because the negative the negative coefficient gives us a little bit of a problem. We want everything inside our brackets to be as simple as possible. So we're just going to take this 1, which is our greatest common factor, and we're just going to make it a negative so that we can get rid of any negatives inside our brackets. So we're going to use negative 1 as our greatest common factor. We'll write it down. We'll add an open bracket, and we'll start the same process all over again. What's our first term divided by negative 1? The answer is x squared. Put that inside the bracket. Look at our second term, 4x, divided by negative 1. The answer to that is negative 4x. We'll put that in the brackets right next to our first term. Looking at our third term, divide the third term by the greatest common factor. Our answer is 3. We'll put that inside the brackets, and we'll close our bracket. There's our answer. This example, we're asked to factor 4x squared minus 12x minus 72. We'll look at all the factors of 4. All the numbers that will divide evenly into 4. There are 1, 2, and 4. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 12? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. What are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 72? And there's the list of all of them. Quite a few. But the largest number that's common to all 3 lists is 4. So our greatest common factor is 4. So we'll use this greatest common factor of 4. We'll start by writing it down. We'll add a bracket. And then we'll look at the first term, 4x squared, and divide it by our greatest common factor. Will give us an answer of x squared. We simply place it inside the bracket. Looking at our second term, negative 12x, divide it by 4, gives us an answer of negative 3x. Put the answer inside, right beside the first term. Our third term is negative 72. Divide it by 4, gives us an answer of negative 18. We place it inside the brackets, and then add our closing bracket. There's our answer. Our next example, 2x squared plus 4x plus 2. We'll list all the numbers that can factor evenly into 2. Those just happen to be 1 and 2. All the numbers that will divide evenly into 4 are 1, 2, and 4. And again, what are all the numbers that will divide evenly into 2 are 1 and 2. The largest number that's common to all three lists is 2. So our greatest common factor is 2. Going back to our equation. So we start by writing our greatest common factor down. That's 2. We add our open bracket. We look at the first term. 2x squared divided by our greatest common factor 2 gives us an answer of x squared. Put that inside the bracket. Looking at our second term, dividing it by the greatest common factor gives us an answer of 2. Gives us an answer of 2x. Put that inside the brackets right next to the first term. Bringing down the third term, dividing it by the greatest common factor gives us an answer of 1. Put it inside the brackets, add our closing bracket, and there we have our answer. Now, we can also have a binomial as a greatest common factor. We have two terms here, 2a bracket 2 plus a and minus 3 bracket 2 plus a. Again, both of these terms can be divided by 2 plus a. So 2 plus a becomes our greatest common factor. Once we have our greatest common factor, we write it down. Our greatest common factor is 2 plus a. We write it down. We add an opening bracket. We bring down our first term and divide it by our greatest common factor. Our first term is 2a times 2 plus a. We divide it by our greatest common factor. Gives us 2. They cancel out. The 2 plus a's cancel out, leaving us with an answer of 2a. We put that inside our bracket. And then we look at our second term. Our second term is negative 3 bracket 2 plus a. We divide it by our common factor, which is 2 plus a. The 2 plus a's cancel out, leaving us with an answer of negative 3, which we place inside the bracket. We add our closing bracket, and there's our answer.